All right. Peace and blessings, peace and love, everyone. My apologies. I had to stop the stream on Instagram and restart it, so that's the reason why I had to for the delay in my start. But I wanted to I needed to play some upbeat, up tempo music to kind of start this conversation off this evening. And of course, this is the promo for tomorrow's show with Dr. Baruch, and he's going to come in and have a discussion about what he identifies as weapons of mass destruction, and he's talking about the destructive foods and diets that we tend to continue to have routine in our life. But yeah, so my apologies for my energy being low. I'm trying to pick myself up. It's been a long day. Really has been a very long day, and I'm working through this, and I'm excited. Don't get it twisted. I am excited about being here. I'm always blessed and honored to come in and do these streams. So excuse me for my low energy. I know as I continue to talk and have a conversation, it'll start to pick up. I'm sure about that. Um, but as I said, we'll have the guest to the for the health wall tomorrow will be Dr. Baruch, and he's going to come in and have a discussion again about weapons of mass destruction. Um, Nephew, you still having issues. You're not able to comment on YouTube. I need to figure out what's going on before tomorrow's show because I don't know why YouTube is not allowing comments. But thanks for letting me know. I might have you come in tomorrow and just do a test with me before we go live. And just as I speak, I'm having problems on Instagram again. I don't know what's going on, but we're gonna continue. We're gonna make this thing work, and kind of work out all the kinks and the bugs before tomorrow's show, uh, just to make sure that everything is up and running, running cool. Now, the one thing about Instagram, I won't be streaming live on Instagram tomorrow. I usually stream live on my doing my promos on Instagram. So, any apologies for if anyone who was on Instagram viewing the show. My apologies. I don't know what's going on uh, with that connection, and I really don't have the time to sit here and play with it right now. And I want to get this promo done. But today again is this is July 23rd, 2025, and this is the promo for tomorrow's show. And we will just go over a few items. And I wanted to close out the show, and with any promos that I do going forward, I'm always going to I'm going to end those promos with something um, that has a metaphysical feel to it, and some philosophical information that can be used in our lives going forward. So, but I was looking through some of my documents, some books and things that I wanted to have a discussion, or what I intended to have a discussion on. And I just loaded up my desk. Got about what 5 books sitting here, maybe more than that I was just thumbing through, just trying to determine what I want to discuss. And then something just popped into my head that, okay, man, let me have a discussion about um a what is identified in the seven circuits of the brain by Dr. Drew Pookrum, and she talks about the seven circuits, did a number of multiple lectures on seven circuits of the brain. And I was looking through the book Mastermind. um I always get this kind of confused. But this is the mastermind, or the key of mental power and development and efficiency, because I had done a journal, had written in my journal um, about over a year ago. Was actually been longer than a year. I think it was like December of 23, I'd written some information in a journal. I journaled some about what I had read in that book and dealing with the reptilian mind. And I'll get deeper into that as I step through what my agendas are and my objective is for tonight's show. But we're looking at I want to try to bring something in positive, but it's very difficult in today's environment in how we look at things and what's happening in this country and things that are happening and how it's affecting us. I always try to make sure that I tie it into what's happening. I try to tie it into the health component, and I do the best that I can to make sure that I'm capable of doing that. But sometimes it just doesn't. You just can't find that link, that stick. So I did what I could do today to try to deal with some things that are happening contemporarily. So excuse me, not contemporaneously. I'm sorry. Which allowed me to dig into what I was mentioning about the seven circuits of the brain. But one of the things that I've kind of realized, and I'm quite sure I'm not the only one, but this epiphany came to me after listening and looking at things that have happened over the last few weeks with the passing of this of the budget bill that came through the administration and things and how that is going to ultimately affect people's lives going forward for um, countless years. People losing health care, people losing access to social programs that allowed them to be able to get by. You know, just to be able to function in their day to day lives, their daily lives, is within a 6 months to a year. And I don't know when this bill with these budget cuts going to fully take effect, but it's anticipated by sometime next year, maybe the beginning of next year, you're going to see people uh, really being affected by these budget cuts because the cuts went directly to social programs that people need in order to be able to get by in their day to day life. And I don't, whatever economic ladder that you're on, none of us in the middle class or not even we can't even consider ourselves in the middle class or middle class anymore. Now it's can be defined as the upper lower class because if any of us who feel or believe that we're in the middle class of the economic scale, if we lose one paycheck, we're done. Period. Especially if we don't have any money saved up. So unfortunately, we have this mentality that the separation of the working class is that the people who are in the lower class and the people in the lower class are worse off than the people in the middle class. Maybe that economically that may be true, but as I stated, if anything happens, those of us who are working have decent wages, if we miss one check, we're done. We're cooked. It's done for us. So all of us are in this same boat. All of us are going to be affected ultimately by these budget cuts, and with the raping of the program, when that begins to take effect, you're going to see people's families really struggle to try to get. So I wanted to mention that because every time I come in, I look at what uh, we can discuss that we can continue to have to keep our focus on. But even before I even say that, look at again, just going back to the budget cuts, the people who are going to be affected by this never have had any significant protest towards how they were going to be affected by that. So they look at the losing health care. losing social programs, looking at the exploitation of people's resources or human resources, exploitation of them as resources, um, soft behavior that could be defined as modern day slavery, where they were rounding up people who have a contribution to the economics of this country, rounding up people and putting them in conditions that are just deplorable. And no one is really saying anything. Those who support this administration are really not saying anything about it. As a matter of fact, they kind of relish the behaviors, even though they don't understand that it's affecting them as well. They tend to not have any pushback or even any reality towards how this affects them. So because they're not dialed in or have any reality of how these situations or how these things that have transpired over the last few weeks toward few weeks to 6 months, because they don't have a reality how it affects them. They just go along with life as if it's, just an everyday casual walk in the park. But the one thing that got these so-called supporters of the administration, these so-called these MAGA fanatics, the one thing that's gotten them up in arms, the one thing that gets them off the sofa and um, encourages them to voice their opinion or their dissatisfaction about these behaviors is the so-called Epstein files. So I'm like, you have the potential of having your health care taken from you. You have the potential of having social programs that allows you to be able to get by in your day-to-day activity, your day-to-day functions, and things that are happening that could loosely be defined as a a fascist government. You don't say anything about that, but you become inspired by nothing but what can be considered as drama, which is what the Epstein files. Those files, they only affect one person or anybody else who's in those files. But I mean, the focus has been on Donald Trump. So that only affects him and the things that he's done in the relationship that he had with Jeffrey Epstein. And yes, he was a, pedophilia and those and sex crimes and things like that. Yeah, those are travesties. They're definitely. I mean, those are travesties that are crimes against humanity. When you are um, abusing young girls, teenage girls, yes, that should be looked at and it should be punished. And those who commit these crimes should be punished to the greatest extent of the law. They should be. But as I said, that doesn't affect the collective. That only affects the person who committed those crimes. But is I don't understand how they have become vocal about something that only affects their president and not which doesn't affect them, but are mum, excuse me, or silent on the things that could potentially damage them economically, could damage their family structure and could actually put them in financial ruins where they won't have any health care, won't have any social programs, and da 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 da. So I mean, it just concludes to me that this country is addicted to drama. Yeah, that's what, and this is how this administration is playing out. They have these press conferences that's full of drama. Everything that this president talks about, he talks about things would that conjures up the emotions of other people. Now he's making this reference about you know Obama and his uh, being a sedition. seditionists or treasonous because of the 2016 and 2020 election. I mean, all this stuff is about how much drama can he conjure up to keep the focus off of his behaviors, his ill doings, his ill-gotten gains, the things that he has done in his life, as younger in his earlier lives, sorry, and the things that's happening in the administration today. So I'm wondering, how is it that you can allow yourself to be whisked away about with so much drama and not be focused on the things that are most important to you as a people or as a family? And that's just again, that concludes to me that this country is addicted to drama. I mean, this is what these reality shows are about. The reality shows are nothing but um, 21st century soap operas. So you can tune into these reality shows and kind of peek or peer into people's lives and become emotionally involved in the lives of those of people who you don't know them from Adam, for lack of a better choice of words. Um, but this is where we are, and I don't again, I don't want to come in and be hyperbolic about my assessment, about my analysis about things that are happening in this country, and without and not continually having to have a discussion about this current administration. But you know, I mean, it's right in front of our faces, up front and center. So we have to continuously talk about it. And while we're talking about it, we have to figure out ways to strategize, putting things strategically put things in place that we can overcome, or try to find ways to be able to overcome some of this foolishness that we are confronted with on a daily. So that's just food for thought. Give us if you're watching this stream right now, after it's all said and done, after I close out the stream for tonight, I hope that these words burns into your ears, into your head, and it kind of prompts you and motivates you to kind of put together in your head things that strategically that you can do for yourself and your family, and your community and your group of people, those who you are associated with, those who people who you are most close to. Figure out ways to be able to help them if this whole thing just uh, goes south, and you have no way to be able to make ends meet. You're going to have to find collectively ways to be able to deal with real bad situations if shit really goes south by sometime by next year. So, um, and as I say that, and again, this administration continues to chip away at the livelihood and the safety of people in this country. This morning, I was reading an article, and it was dealing with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. It says the EPA is said to draft a plan to end its ability to fight climate change. So this ongoing argument about there is no climate change, and no global warming, um, has been led by in those lobbyists who have made it their business to go to Congress and argue about the hoax of climate change, where it's a contradiction to what's being said in the scientific community. There's you don't find very many countries that are arguing against climate change other than what you find here. And I don't know what the motivation behind it. I don't know how people can be easily swept away in an argument that's been proven by science. You don't even have to have a science degree to see how the trajectory of storms and the impact and how severe the storms are continually growing over the last decade or two. You know, the hurricanes that we see coming up the coast today always have a potential of becoming category 5 hurricanes. Always. Where, decades ago, it was very rare that you would see a hurricane with that has the potential of becoming a category 5. Even the thunderstorms, the flooding, everything that we've seen over the last uh, few weeks, with the excessive flooding, the powerful storms that are coming through, rainstorms, thunderstorms. Um, and I thought I did see an alert that there is a hurricane warning off the coast, so we don't, what that has the potential materializing into what that's going to be if it actually becomes a hurricane grade storm, and how that's going to affect people who is will be in the path of that storm. Because remember, they took away, or they chopped FEMA in half, which was it allowed people um, pre, to receive support or aid when they are um, when they are affected or caught up in these storms. They've taken away, I think it's OSHA. They've cut the funding and cut staff in OSHA where they can't track storms as effectively as they were able to track storms, uh, years ago. So all of this has an effect on the citizens of this country. And now you look up in the paper, you see an article where it says the EPA is set to draft a plan to end its ability to fight climate change. I'm like, what is this all about? Why have they made it their business to affect people's lives to the degree that they are affecting people's lives, and without any compunction whatsoever? So in this article, let me just read it, a few paragraphs. There's about one, two, three, four paragraphs. And so they're trying to repeal a um they're trying to do a repeal on a ruling that was put in place in 2009. And of course, in 2009, we know who the president was. In 2009, that was Barack Obama. So it seems like any policies that have been put in place during this man's administration, Trump has this I don't want to use vulgar language, but he has this desire to try to rescind or replace or repeal anything that Obama put in place. So what he's saying in this article is written. Lisa Friedman is the author of the article. So it says that instead it argues that the EPA, in calling the repeal and the endangerment findings, the draft the EPA rule does not appear to focus on the science or try to make the case that fossil fuels aren't warming the planet. And I'm jumping around in the article. I'm trying to figure out a place where I can actually go in an entry point to have this discussion. So let me start here. So since taking office, Trump has abandoned U.S. efforts to tackle global warming. He also has moved to roll back virtually every federal policy aimed at curbing greenhouse gases from the burning of oil, gas, and coal. So we know that um, oil, gas, and coal are antiquated ways to be able to use energy or to produce energy or electricity or energy. So his administration, and because he had made this promise about bringing coal energy back, which is again, there's a ridiculous um, plot to try to get support of people of his supporters in rural areas, because a lot of the people in places that supported him um, were traditionally worked in coal mines and things like that, which it's already been confirmed that working in a coal mine is a health hazard as well. So it says that his administration has encouraged more production and use of fossil fuels while stifling the growth of clean energy and electric vehicles. In calling to repeal the endangerment findings, the draft EPA rule does not appear to focus on the science or try to make the case that fossil fuels aren't warming the planet. Instead, it argues that the EPA overstepped its legal authority under the Clean Air Act by making a broad finding that greenhouse gases emissions endanger the public welfare. It makes the case that EPA administrator has a limited power that apply only to specific circumstances. Um, so Joseph Goffman, who led the air office at the EPA under the Biden administration, said the rule will all but certainly face legal challenges if it's finalized. He said that Trump administration proposed rule conflicts with the 2007 Supreme Court ruling in Massachusetts, a landmark case that found that for the first time that greenhouse gases were a pollutant under the Clean Air Act, that led the EPA to make a finding in 2009 that said that 6 greenhouse gases were harming public health. But there's also in this article, it also indicates that in their efforts to roll back this policy, they're changing how emissions are done for vehicles. And my apologies because I had it marked, but I can't find it now. But it was talking about how, um, people who have vehicles, you're responsible for, I think it's every year or every 2 years or something like that. You have to go and you do an emissions test where they're saying that, that's no longer necessary if they're successful in um, repealing this ruling. That if you are that you no longer have to go and do an emissions test on your vehicles, and that's something that kind of worked pretty well. Yes, it was expensive. It was, of course, it was a money grab. Anytime you're doing uh, governmental policies, things like that, there's always going to be money involved in it. Where you got to pay for these different types of services, but the bottom line is what were these services useful? Were they effective in particularly for greenhouse gases and emissions from vehicles? Were they successful in reducing carbon emissions from vehicles, from older vehicles that have a tendency to put more carbon emissions into the air? Yes, they were effective, but the rollback is not for the purpose of being able to again to reduce carbon emissions from older vehicles. This basically is an attack on electrical vehicles. That's what this whole argument, or this thing with dealing with carbon emissions from vehicles and taking emission tests and things like that. uh the push was that eventually, you can get tax breaks and credits and things like that if you went and you purchase a electrical vehicle. But can you imagine that for years we've been doing these emission tests on vehicles to try to determine whether your emission test for a vehicle is passing or failing. And if the emission test was a failed test, you had to take necessary steps to be able to correct whatever problems that your vehicle was having that was putting extra carbon or carbon emissions into the air. If that policy gets rolled back, then you have vehicles that are putting excessive carbon emissions into the air without them being checked. Um, how is this going to affect the climate? We don't know. I mean, that's something that's well, I don't know. That's something that the scientists have to make that determination. But the as far as I could remember, the pollutants that were being placed in the air in heavily populated cities like like Los Angeles. I mean, that they were able to reduce the carbon emissions in their air just by basically by doing those steps alone, by making sure that the people who were following through with their emission tests for their vehicles, they were able to at least reduce the carbon emissions that were in the air and the amount of pollutants that were in the air based upon the the adoption of these programs. So it'll be interesting if they're successful. They said it's a possibility that it's going to be most likely be challenged in the court. So let's stay in, let's stay focused and see where this goes. The other article I want to read, and this goes right along with what the discussion that we're having tomorrow. I mean, the EPA. I just wanted to just throw that out there, just to have that brief discussion. But um, this other article that I pulled off from the Washington Post, it says, "Does red meat cause cancer?" Here's what the science says. And again, these arguments that are being published today, these articles that are being published today, this has already been settled science. You know, has been this argument has been settled for decades. And even in the article that was printed, it says it's no longer even um it's no longer even debatable. That's been concluded that yes, red meat causes cancer. Excessive red meat causes cancer. But in this article that I'm reading, it says, "I can tell you with full," and she even the doctor who wrote the article, she says, "I even admits it." Said, "I can tell you with full certainty that eating red meat will increase your cancer risk. Only that the data is concerning enough that the benefits of frequently eating red meat don't outweigh the risk." So she goes into the article and she gives her recommendations on those who who are eating meat, what they can do to kind of curtail their risk of getting cancer from eating excessive red meat. Now, again, we're dealing with a country that loves its meat. They love eating their beef, they love eating their pork, they love eating their chicken, they love it, all different types of animal proteins. They love this, particularly their beef. So she gives suggestions on what can be done to lessen the risk of you developing a disease like cancer or colon cancer by eating excessive red meats. Now, this is what she suggests. This is how to cook healthier red meats. Specific carcinogens can spontaneously form when meats are cooked at high temperatures. So we again know this, that anything that's cooked at high temperatures can eventually affect that food and turn it into a carcinogenic. So this is the things that she's recommending that can be done to lessen that risk. So there's a few simple tips can help. Avoiding charring, smoking, or cooking meats at very high temperatures, like with grilling or pan searing. Just try to keep the temperature, excuse me, try to keep the heat under 400 degrees Fahrenheit and minimize direct exposure of meat to an open flame. Slow cooking meat is a great option. Make sure that meat reaches a safe internal temperature to prevent foodborne illnesses. That's 145 to 165 Fahrenheit, depending on the type of meat. And she also says marinate your meat beforehand. A 2008 study analyzed wet marinades with a combination of soybean oil, a carcinogenic, water, vinegar, and spices. But other studies have found that marinades with honey can also be effectively in reducing carcinogen formation with cooking meat. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me, how they talk about the temperatures at which it's safe to cook and prepare food. When you cook and prepare food at low temperatures, meat. I'm gonna be specific here. When you cook and prepare meat at low temperatures, you're always running a risk of not completely destroying any foodborne substances that are in that meat. So they're recommending not to cook meat under four. Try to keep the preparation of heat under 400 degrees Fahrenheit. It says minimize the exposure of meat to an open flames. Make sure that the meat reaches a safe internal temperature to prevent foodborne illnesses. And they're suggesting or recommending 145 to 165. But here's the thing that's interesting. When you're cooking meat and the internal temperature of that meat reaches 145 to 165 degrees, it may kill any foodborne illnesses, and they don't define what those foodborne illnesses are, but you can best believe that at 145 degrees, it does not kill the parasites that are in that meat. And even if it kills the live parasites that are in the meat at 145 or 165, it damn sure don't kill the eggs. So in your efforts of being able to follow these guidelines to say, well, don't cook the meat at 400 degrees, more than 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which at least gives a better opportunity to kill any of the parasites that are in that meat, because meat, let's be real, meat is loaded with parasites. Meat is loaded with parasite eggs as well. So if you do not reach a certain temperature while you're preparing this meat or cooking this meat, you can all forget about just completely forget about having to kill the parasites that's in that meat. And it takes even more extreme temperatures to kill the eggs that the parasite leaves behind. So I make this reference because everything that suggests that, it's okay for you to eat your meat. And again, I'm not tackling or being abusive or being disrespectful to somebody's diet. But real is real. Meat comes with parasites. Period. And again, that's been a scientific proven fact. It comes with parasites. There's parasites that lives in cow. There's definitely parasites that live in the pig. There's parasites that live in the fish. There's parasites that live in the chicken. There's parasites that live in the lamb or any other animal meats that you have fashioned yourself to prepare. There's parasites in all those items, all those food items. And if you are not careful in making sure that while you're preparing or cooking these foods, that you make efforts to destroy these parasites in your preparation for these foods, you're adding more parasites into your system, into your body. And parasites, when they begin to proliferate throughout the different organs in the bloods, they become carcinogenic as well. They become uh, uh, breathing grounds for all types of diseases and illnesses. So, you got six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Which way, what should you do? Should you find a way to be able to prepare meats where you are guaranteeing that at least you're killing the parasites in the meat that you're preparing? Or do you go the route of preparing meat that only reaches the internal temperature of 145 degrees or 165 degrees, and you're eating your parasites and you're eating your eggs and you're eating everything else that goes along with, because you want your steak bloody rare? Think about that. Um, Another note: if you don't believe that parasites exist in the meat, try this experiment. Take a piece of your steak, and if you don't have to use the whole steak. You can just cut it in half. Just take a piece of it, put it in a dish, pour some Coke on top of the meat, and let it sit for a few days and watch the maggots come out. Watch the maggots come out. So you know that you covered the dish, so you know that flies weren't able to get inside of the dish to lay eggs into the meat that would eventually become that would eventually hatch and become maggots. So how did the maggots get into the meat? That's a question that you should ask yourself. Okay. Um, 5 misunderstood foods and how to spot nutrition myths. I thought this was an interesting article. And I'm not going to go into detail because I want to kind of focus on the last two items that I have on the agenda for tonight. Um, but it has 5 misunderstood foods and how to spot nutrition myths. So you got raw milk, seed oils, no nitrates deli meats, green powders, nightshade vegetables, and how to spot them. So this is an article that came from the Washington Post. Is was printed yesterday. 5 misunderstood meats. It's gonna be 5 misunderstood foods and how to spot nutrition myths. So take a look at that. I thought it was a pretty interesting article, but it talked about raw meat. Excuse me, raw milk. The raw milk that hasn't been pasteurized has been in the news as of late. Those in favor of it claim it contains more nutrients and beneficial bacteria than the pasteurized version you get at the grocery store. Others see it differently. There is actually no credible evidence that raw milk is better for you than pasteurized. Pasteurization changes the nutritional quality of the milk, which it does. It simply processes of heating the milk for a short time to kill off diseases causing organisms like E. coli, Listeria, and Salmonella. Now, pasteurization does kill off those parasites, and it does make a difference between there's a great difference between eating or drinking raw milk versus pasteurized milk, particularly in this country. The the microbiome that's in your intestines cannot handle unpasteurized milk. If you try to drink unpasteurized milk, you're gonna be running to the bathroom seemingly every hour on the hour because there aren't it doesn't your gut bacteria doesn't contain the bacteria to be able to break down and process the milk because the people in this country are used to drinking pasteurized milk and which kills off the bacteria. Um, and if the excuse me, not kills off the bacteria in the milk. And if you do not have the enzymes in your in if you don't have the need for the enzymes in your intestines to process any of the bacteria that's coming in from the milk, then the enzymes or the bacteria that's in your gut um, falls asleep too. So when you try to put that foreign agent into your gut, like unpasteurized milk, you don't have the enzymes or the bacteria to be able to break that milk down or even deal with the parasites. I mean, not the parasites, but the bacteria that's in the milk. You don't have the bacteria in your belly to be able to deal with the bacteria that is in the milk and help you to be able to digest it. The only recourse is for your body to eliminate it, and the way it eliminates unpasteurized milk is it's going to send you to the bathroom frequently. So there is a difference, but it's an interesting article. Pick it up, read it on your spare time. I mean, it's to me, it was just a fun article. Um, but the next article that I wanted to pick up and introduce is called. There was a study that was done, and it's printed the in Stanford Medicine. There's massive biomolecular shifts occur in our 40s and our 60s. Stanford Medicine researchers find. So this article has been printed twice, as far as I'm aware, and it talks about what happens as we age. We are finite beings, and we will age. The thing is, we want to try to curtail the aging process as much as we can through um, keeping a clean lifestyle as cleanly as we can find. But they found out that in the ages of 40 and the ages of 60, they're saying that there is a dramatic shift or dramatic burst of those two within those two ages between 40 and 44 and 60, where the body ages much greater than any other age. Now, there are some factors that are involved in that. There's always going to be factors that are involved because the body just and it just doesn't. There's no switch or gene that kind of flips on and says, "Okay, I've reached this age. Now I'm going to go on a decline of health or aging." You know, they looked at different factors um, that could determine, excuse me, not determine, that could be a factor in what could be identified as reasons for aging at the age of 44 or the age of 60. And they looked at, they said, well, it's a possibility because what women they go through perimenopause or they go through menopause at between the ages of 40 and 50. uh, on average, women go through menopause around maybe the late. Some of them can go as early as the late 30s into their 40s, and they thought that might have been a factor. But when they did the test, they said, okay, well, it's not only affecting. We not only see these bursts in women, we also see these bursts in men, and it goes through the entire article that kind of it kind of makes an argument that this is inevitable and is dealing with DNA, RNA, DNA, and proteins and metabolites and things like that that could be contributing to the aging process. But what kind of bothered me in this article, it doesn't, it goes throughout the entire article, but it really doesn't add into the equation about lifestyle and dietary habits until way until the end of the argument. Excuse me, the way into the end of the article. And this article was reprinted about 4 or 5 times. I looked at 3 to 4 different, um, news articles that printed this story as early back as, 2 years ago. And they kinda covered up the conclusion of what also could be contributing to the aging factor. So in the study that was done by Stanford Medicine, they kinda get to it. The article that was printed in medical research, which was printed, they said 11 months ago. They kind of repeated the same article where it says scientists find humans age dramatically in two bursts at 44 and then 60. But they don't go into they do not address other factors that could contribute to the aging. Well, the study that was done in Stanford Medicine goes into it. They kind of conclude with this, which, you know, I'm glad that they did because the other articles just kind of left the information hanging. But it says, in people in their 40s, significant changes were seen in a number of molecules related to alcohol, caffeine, and lipid metabolism, cardiovascular disease, and skin and muscle. In those in their 60s, changes are related to carbohydrate and caffeine metabolism, immune regulation, kidney function, cardiovascular disease, and skin and muscle. And then it says it's possible some of these changes could be tied to lifestyle or behavior factors that cluster at these age groups rather than being driven by biological factors, Snyder said. For example, dysfunction in alcohol metabolism could result from an uptick in alcohol consumption in people's mid 40s, often stressful period of life. The team plans to explore the drivers of these clusters of change, but whatever their causes, the existence of these clusters point to the need for people to pay attention to their health, especially in their 40s and 60s. That could look like increasing exercise to protect your heart and maintain muscle mass at both ages, or decreasing alcohol consumption in your 40s as your ability to metabolize alcohol slows. He says, I'm a big believer that we should try to adjust our lifestyles. Listen to this. I am a big believer that we should try to adjust our lifestyles while we're still healthy. So in this article, it contributes lifestyle, which is one of the biggest components of people's health, is the life that we live, what we do, what we eat, what we drink, how we exercise, do we exercise, what we do on a daily basis. Are we eating proper foods? Are we getting nutrition? Are we eating fruits and vegetables? Are we eating foods that provide us with optimal nutrition? Are we eating a lot of animal fats and proteins? Are we eating meats every day? Are things that contribute to how you going to age in your later years. Yes, we do not pay attention to how the lifestyle that we live in our early 20s, in instances, or in our teens and early 20s, and instances in their early 30s as well. We don't pay attention to that. But when we get closer to our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, or whatever, the lifestyle that we live in our 20s, in our teens, begins to take a toll, because it's not about the body itself beginning to waste away and deteriorate. Yes, we know that apoptosis takes place, which is cell death, where the cells in our body begin to die quicker than what they're being regenerated, which contributes to our aging. But also, what is it that we're eating? What is it that we're doing? What is our lifestyle in this process of these early years, or within that window of our early years, that could be contributing to the so-called burst, the the burst of aging at age 40, or the burst of aging at age 60. Because if you're drinking consistently alcohol every weekend, regardless of whether you consider yourself as a moderate drinker or what have you, if you're drinking alcohol every weekend, the accumulative effect of drinking alcohol every weekend eventually is going to catch up to you. If you're smoking, if you're eating bad foods, if you're not exercising, if you are on a bad diet, if you continue that trend, that track, that behavior, that routine eventually is going to catch up to you. So you'll see diseases like cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, diabetes, cancer, um, uh, mental acuity diseases like Alzheimer's or dementia. You see those things begin to begin to surface, or become present in your life at later years, primarily, and I'm saying primarily because of the lifestyle that you led leading up to those years. Now, of course, again, those are factors that could play a role. There are other factors that could play a role in the aging process, but that's up front and center. Lifestyle has a larger contribution to how we age, more so than anything else. And the study of epigenetics has kind of proven that. And just as a note and as a point, um, it's either going to be the show in August, the second show in August, or the first show in September, one or the other. I'm going to deal with the a title is called Biology of Belief and the Power of the Subconscious Mind, which kind of divulges and dabs in epigenetics. So saying all that just kind of leads me back to what I opened the discussion up with. And I was talking about the seven circuits of the brain, and what I had written or what I had journaled about the behaviors of us as humans in this country, and it's not just in this country, but throughout the world. And there's 7 circuits that Dr. Pookrum laid out. I'm gonna focus on the first circuit. So the first circuit corresponds to the brainstem activity. So brainstem is the medulla oblongata, the area where all the nerves come up into the brain at the base of the skull, and then enter up into the brain, and they have that function in the anatomy. But everything kind of meets at the base of the skull, what they call the medulla oblongata, and which actually is the oldest part. The medulla oblongata is the oldest part of the brain, so that's why they identify it as the reptilian brain. So the reptilian brain only deals with the basis of survival. That's all it deals with. It doesn't have any. It doesn't deal with any comprehensive thought, any analytical behavior, nothing other than just basic survival. So that the brain stem functions corresponds to the nervous system and consciousness of the reptile. Uh, this specifically, this means that we inherently can do what reptiles can do, including regenerate. The lens with stepping over that. So the problems that arise from the state of consciousness is that an individual will see the world around them as the reptile does. The reptile's only two concerns are what is safe and what is not safe. So reptiles only come together for two reasons: defense and reproduction. And she says uh, individuals who are trapped in first circuit mentality deal with their reality basis on this type of awareness. The individual is always preoccupied with the personal safety and competition for survival. The typical male female relationship has no foundation in trust, secondary to fear, being a predominant emotional boundary, along with only pure attraction relating to the sexual drive instinct. Across societies, these types of relationships are becoming the norm and are short-lived. Uh, fighting, fighting and sexual drive becomes the foundation of an individual's life who is trapped in first circuit. Protecting our homes, our cars, our overall best interest becomes obsession. The most dominant individuals win win the carcass. I'm sorry. The most dominant individual win the carcass. Um, what is she saying here? She's saying that, and if you look at how things are playing out in this country, basically the ones who are in rulership are interested in nothing but individual power. They have no desire to exercise human behavior to care for other people. It's only about themselves. They are selfish in their behaviors. Not only are selfish in their behaviors, they're also destructive in their behaviors and towards themselves and towards others. So when I was writing in this journal, there's always been this argument or this discussion around the reptilian race. And when I became introduced to metaphysics years ago, and where the discussion was hot about the reptilian race, everything was always talking about the reptilian race, the reptilian race, the reptilian race, and immediately because we do not have a full grasp of the concept of who was talking about the reptilian race, because we don't have a full concept and a full grasp of what is identified as a reptilian race. We immediately visualize people walking around with reptilian eyes and scaled skin, green skin, or what have you, not knowing that this is metaphorically a identifier for people who operate and function and behave from first circuit brainstem activity, which based with, again, it's preoccupied with safety and um, and reproduction. is what first circuit behavior is about, or reptilian brain is about: safety and reproduction. And you look at the things that happens in this country, in this administration, and not just focusing on the administration alone. You focus on the uh, the society in its entirety, and that's all we focus on. We focus on survival, and we focus on reproduction. You look at videos, you look at conversations, you look at um, the um, the new age soap operas that are out there that are identified as reality shows. You look at all the topics and everything that they're talking about, how many cars and the types of cars that they have. For men, how many women that they're getting, how many women they're laying down. Women, they're running behind men and trying to get what they can get from men. All of it is about themselves. They do not demonstrate a care for their fellow human being. So my conclusion in this, in reading or writing in my journal last year or 2 years ago, was, and I said this at the end of my promo show 2 weeks ago, where I was reading from the book What is God, where the reference was made, or the statement was made: how many human beings do you see before you, or that it's uncommon or it's rare to be born a human being. And that statement can be made unequivocally, because our behaviors dictate and shows that we are not behaving as what would be defined as a human being. So the what to me, what could be considered as uh, an enigma or enigmatic, is that, are we operating? Is this the are we have we reached a plateau of what a human being, or how to define a human being? Have we reached that plateau, or is there something? Is are there other levels for us to go on? And if we've been on this planet for the number of years as Homo sapiens sapien, if we've been on this planet for the number of years that we've been on this planet, and we only advanced as far as being able to be destructive and disrespectful to each other, and have not demonstrated that we're capable of showing compassion for other people, maybe this is where we are. Because if you are supposed to evolve to higher levels of consciousness, and as far as we've gotten is being able to show uh, how effectively we can kill other people, creating weapons that will destroy you, like bombs and guns and things like that. In this current administration, they're trying to figure out ways to be able to build up their military so they can boast about how destructive they can be to other people. How is that a demonstration of being humane? So no, we're not seeing ourselves, or we're not behaving, or we're not demonstrating that we have an understanding of what is supposed to be defined as humanity. We haven't demonstrated that yet. So my question is, have we plateaued? Is this where we are? This Have we evolved to the highest level that we can evolve as human beings? Because if we've been here for over 100,000 years, and this is all that we've been able to accomplish in terms of our relationship with other people, other human species on this planet, is only about how we can exploit each other, how the best way that we can kill each other, how to become more affectionate and more passionate towards accumulating material like cars and uh, homes and things like that, and not care that there are people that are living on the streets, homeless every day, trying to find a meal. And you got people living up in you know 100,000, 100,000. What did we say? $20 million. I'm sorry, $100 million. Not 100,000. $100 million homes, looking down on people who are living in the streets. trying to survive. You go out in places like Skid Row in California. I mean, it's you find corners of people living on the streets trying to survive, and then you look up in the hills, you see Beverly Hills people living in $100 million mansions, looking down on people who are trying to survive every day. You have to ask yourself, is this the highest that we have been capable of evolving? I don't know. Maybe we had examples of people who have come before us, who have demonstrated a sense of humanity, who have shown us that there is a sense of humanity, a sense of compassion for other people, and done what they could do to try to spread that message, spread that behavior, that infectious behavior amongst other people. And society, excuse me, became threatened by that ideology and killed them. You got to ask yourself, what is that about? What is that about? So that's just food for thought. And I don't know who's going to watch this video for tonight. I mean, I hope that in the archives that people stop and look and just hear what it is that I'm talking about tonight, and the message that I had to deliver. Um, these are discussions that I'm going to have more frequently when I do these promos. Yes, I'll talk about health. I'll talk about who's coming on as guests, whatever it is that's going to be on the lineup in the lineup for the show. But you know, we have to be serious about where we're heading as a people. We really do. You know, what kind of world are we going to live? Those of us who are getting older, what kind of world are we going to leave, excuse me, not live, but leave for the babies who are coming into the world today? Those who are teenagers, what kind of world are we going to leave them? Are we going to teach them better? Are we going to show and demonstrate to them that there is a way that we can live that is better than how we demonstrated, particularly over the last 400 years? What are we going to do? I put that on everyone's heart tonight to think about that. Are we going to continue to live as reptilians whose primary focus is survival and reproduction? Or are we going to increase ourselves to become God consciousness where we are demonstrating and exercising our compassion towards other people? So I'll leave you at that. Don't forget to tune into tomorrow's show, 7:30 Eastern time on the Health Walk with when we have a discussion with Dr. Baruch, and we'll have the topic as weapons of mass destruction when we have a discussion about the foods that are available for us to eat, that ultimately the diets that we choose to partake in every day is contributing to our health problems. And talking with him this early this afternoon, he said that he's reaching out to another elder who might be able to join us because he has invited the elder to come in and do a lecture at his shop at his cafe on Saturday. So he want to try to reach out and see if he can join and kind of promote that show, but then he also have contributors to the discussion. So join in tomorrow. This is going to be a dynamic show. Again, these are things that I envision. These are things that my co-hosts and I envision, and we want to continue to elevate the health walk and provide some content, provide information, provide knowledge that's going to be beneficial to all of us who tune into this show, whether you're watching it on the archives or whether you're watching it live. 7:30 Eastern time. live on YouTube and live on Facebook. Until then, always be the change that you want to see in the world. When you look into that mirror and you see that image looking back at you, ask yourself, are you being the best version of yourself that you can be? And if you're not, and if you're being honest with yourself and you say you're not, if you see that there's room for growth, find ways to be able to continue to grow. All of us, none of us are perfect, but there's always room for us to grow. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, you look at yourself and say, am I being the best version that I can be? And you be the change that you want to see in the world. So until then, peace and love all the time.